We're here, man. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful time. Of course, the Christmas of the NFL offseason. It's the NFL draft. What's going on? Me, White. Appreciate y'all being here, man. And this is going to be quite the night, man. Obviously, you kind of know what's happening in number one, but then it's a free for all once you hit probably pick number three. It's going to be interesting to say the least. Pittsburgh's been fantastic. Been absolutely wonderful venue. You know, I've been to Pittsburgh quite a bit in my life. I grew up on the other side of the state in Philadelphia, so spent a good amount of time out here. But nonetheless, of course, a passionate fan base from the Steelers, passionate fans, obviously. So being able to see the energy that they bring and ultimately kind of motivates the other fandoms, right? Naturally. So, of course, with our Carolina Panthers, if you know me, if you follow me, you know I do mostly coverage for the Carolina Panthers. It's going to be an interesting night, to say the least. A lot of different options, a lot of different things that the Panthers could go with. And I think we should just start by assessing the season, right? And assessing what happened in the 2025-2026 season, a season that I think was unexpected for so many people, right? This Panthers team coming off of a year where there was improvement, but still a lot to prove and a lot to assess and look into. And it all starts with the draft last April with the acquisition of Tetairoa McMillan, who ended up being a fantastic get for Dan Morgan, Dave Canales, and the Carolina Panthers. Going into now this season after, again, 8-9, a wild, which, by the way, thinking about this process and thinking about the pathway, right? The way that you saw the Panthers really come into their own, the way that you saw Bryce Young really come into his own as well. Suddenly, Bama Bryce, you know, the tendencies were no longer there. Suddenly, you had a solidified leader, better known as the Carolina Reaper. You sneak your way into the playoffs. You kind of moonwalk back into it, but somehow, some way, you, in that game, show a lot of progress, show a lot of, you know, just overall, you know, kind of proved you could be there. Ultimately didn't work out for the Carolina Panthers, and ultimately that game was a loss. And now you reassess, you go into the next season and you see, okay, how do you want to go? Where do you want this team to build? How do you want this team to build? And I think for a lot of people, the conversation is weapons. And the biggest weapon I think a lot of us were hoping for, a lot of fans and analysts and people are trying to build their mock draft. You know, you hope to God that Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon falls into your lap. And the more you see some of these mock drafts and the more you see the needs of some of these teams, the less likely it feels it's going to happen. Regardless, what a get it would be. Kenyon Sadiq, an absolute freak of nature type of athlete, a guy that can jump out of the gym, push you around, sure hands. A lot of positives there for Kenyon Sadiq. Reminds me a lot of Zach Ertz back during the Super Bowl seasons for the Philadelphia Eagles. I've seen a lot of Vernon Davis comparisons, and sure, yeah, I think that's a little bit of a lazy one. But the physicality, the sure hands, the way he can run routes and, you know, ultimately get you the first down when you need it, that's the things that you hope for in a tight end. Kenyon Sadiq can do that and more. Another guy on the board for tight end, Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. Kind of the opposite of Kenyon Sadiq. Less so a physical, more so an athletic type of guy. You know, dude, again, really good hands, but not the greatest blocker in the world. We can't sit here and lie about that. But a guy that you look into in the second round, is that somebody that the Carolina Panthers want to go after? Tight end is a very interesting position in this draft. Because outside of Stowers and Sadiq, you're looking at project guys. Do you want to stretch out on an Oscar Delp out of Georgia? Do you want to stretch on Max Clare? Or do you want to wait? Do you want to just hang out? Maybe go with John Michael Gillenborg out of Wyoming. You know, hang out for a Marlon Klein out of Michigan. There's a lot of different things you could do here if you're the Carolina Panthers. And, of course, there's the wide receiver conversation, which is increasingly becoming the favorite amongst fans and amongst analysts. And, you know, here's my thing. This is a great wide receiver class. And, you could argue that there's really nobody that stands out that you want to take at 19 that would make a massive difference on your team, unless, of course, they were a wide receiver. But I'll be honest with you, man. I think you can wait. Ted Hurst out of Georgia State, probably my favorite prospect right now. A guy who is just really, really sure with his hands. He's got great footwork, very physical, kind of like a mini A.J. Brown. It's a guy who, come day 2, could really be a great get for various different teams. And I think the Panthers could certainly use someone like that. That conversation about the wide receivers is interesting, right? Because then you go back to Tetairoa McMillan and Jalen Coker, right? And the tandem that they have become and the potential and, potential success that they have going into this year. Jalen Coker arrived towards the end of the season. Of course, the game that he had up against the Rams in the playoffs was nothing short of impressive. Tetairoa McMillan, putting on an extra 10, 15 pounds in the offseason. You had the physicality, which is awesome. There's a lot of possibilities there for this team. I'm seeing people on TikTok. We're live right now on YouTube and TikTok. I appreciate the love for the shirt. Funny enough, my wife actually threaded this. So bought the shirt from Abercrombie. Wife threaded the shirt. Kind of a vibe. Super cool. So shout out to her. Shout out to Elise for being super creative. She rules. Anyway. Where is I? Tetairoa McMillan. Jalen Coker. Coker's got a lot of upside, but, not really the biggest amount of time to prove, right? Same thing with McMillan. I mean, McMillan, Rookie of the Year. Love it. Love to see that. But if one of them goes down, who's next? And to be honest with you, the potential of Xavier Legette seems to be dwindling the more and more we see him on the field, which is a bummer because, obviously 7th, 8th overall pick. A lot of potential out of South Carolina. Just unfortunately just doesn't have the hands. The hands have not been consistent for Xavier Legette, which has resulted in some pretty unfortunate moments for him. I don't know, man. It's gonna be an interesting wide receiver draft, to say the least. And I don't know if the Panthers would benefit nearly as much. Where I think the Panthers should go, and this is just me being realistic here, is the full-on sure route of improving your offensive line, or honestly, sure up that defense more, man. If you increase the defense, you were 30th in the league last year with sacks, and it wasn't. Yeah, especially in the division where the Falcons had 57. Not good, man. Not ideal. So, as time goes on, and as you look at this team, maybe going safe is the route to go for the Panthers. I don't know. I feel good about that personally. There's a lot of guys I like. Hakeem Mesdor out of Miami, which I think is a little bit of a controversial take. He's older. He's going to be 25 once he takes the field in the NFL. But I don't know. There's something there. I think there's some potential and something there that ultimately he could really do something with. So I don't know. Got a couple comments on TikTok right now. Who's the Vikings drafting? Honestly, Vikings they could go a lot of different ways, man. The thing that worries me as somebody who covers the Panthers is if Thieneman goes off the board right before, because I think Dylan Thieneman is a big name that people would love to see. I mean, he's fantastic safety, physical, great hitter, really good in various different types of coverage. Could see him there. I think either way, they should go with safety. If they don't go with Dylan Thieneman, dude, I love Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out of Toledo. Probably my favorite hitter in the draft. Dude hits like he owes you lunch or you owe him lunch money. Just a lot of good energy there. And it's always fun to see, kind of a small school guy go a little bit higher. But I don't know. Hey, that's wild. Let's go. But yeah, it's there's a lot of different ways a lot of teams can go. I think the crazy part about this year is once you get past number 2, the draft boards are going to get wild. There's people who want to say that Sonny Styles is the best linebacker in this draft, and he certainly is. And there are people who would take him over his teammate Arbel Reese. It's I don't know. It's like where do you feel the best about your decision making? Where do you feel best about your team's potential, your team's effort? And I think for a team like the Raiders and the Jets, you just want the best player available. You need a quarterback, obviously, if you're the Jets. So, or no, if you're the if you're the Jets too, but if you're the Raiders, so you take Fernando Mendoza. That's obviously off the board. Move on down. David Bailey seems to be the likely one to go to the Jets. Then come number 3, Jeremiah Love could be off the board, which I'm not a take a running back in the first round kind of guy. I just don't think that's realistic for many teams. I don't think you're going to, I think for most teams, a running back by committee situation could work. You saw it in Carolina last year with Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. I think they'll do the same thing this year with Chuba, Jonathan Brooks, A.J. Dillon. You'll see it here in Pittsburgh with Rico Dowdle and Jaylen Warren. So a lot of things, a lot of ways that things could go. I think in the top 10, the most surefire, fantastic pick you could make, or player that will day one make a massive impact on your team is Sonny Styles. I think Sonny Styles, first of all, athletic machine. Dude's great in coverage. Fantastic as far as athleticism. That's his name's getting called right now. I think the potential is just limitless with him, man. So we're gonna see what happens there. Definitely. I'm gonna come off of this for a second. I'm just gonna hang out with you guys on TikTok for a second. So as you can see, we're at Radio Room right now, which is kind of wild. So go Pats. Okay, we got to go Pats in here. Which, I mean, the Vrabel situation is just a whole different thing right now. That's a whole weird situation. I'm at the draft, dude. I'm in Pittsburgh. Okay, so I made a claim that Mike Vrabel, and he didn't, but I was like, I think he might step down, after the old Diana Rossini situation, and obviously that's a mess and a half that the Patriots were not expecting. They're just trying to pick up the pieces after losing the Super Bowl, and they have a fantastic coach, which the whole, it's so funny with the layers of the whole Diana Rossini thing. The fact that she had a vote for Coach of the Year, she had a vote for MVP, which went to Mike Vrabel and went to Drake May. But I don't know, man. It's it's an interesting situation, to say the least, out there in New England. I think there's possibilities they move their pick. I mean, they're looking into getting A.J. Brown, which come June 1st, he will be a Patriot if they have it their way. No, dude, I just paid for myself. Too long didn't read on the situation. Vrabel basically just kind of apologized and said that he's not, reflecting, or his actions don't reflect the Patriot way or whatever, So, which not shocking. Just pretty much just a long-winded apology. What did he do, though? Okay, yeah, so I don't know if you've seen. So if you're not familiar with the situation, which some of you might not be, it's the anthem. Pause.
Down to 8. So it disappears to your neck right then.
And I didn't expect her to riff. We're back. It's the NFL draft, dude. So we're here in Pittsburgh. Of course, round number 1 tonight, tomorrow 2 and 3, Sunday or Saturday 4 to 7. My favorite part about the draft is just like the later days when it's like, okay, you see some names that you really love, or like, if you're somebody like me who like nerds out, makes a full 7-round mock draft, you love seeing those names that you like kind of had a hunch about getting picked. It's like mine this year's Zane Durant out of Penn State. Dude's got a motor and a half, and it's just got like a good amount of physicality. He's had a fantastic combine. He ran a 4.7 40 for a D tackle, which is nuts. He's just undersized. He also had a weird situation because, not even halfway through the season, within like 3 games, his coach gets fired. Like, you can't really have, things like that happen and expect your senior year to go normally, right? So I think with Zane Durant, just in the right situation, he reminds me a lot of Byron Murphy, sorry. Byron Murphy out of Seattle. I think there's speed there. He's got physicality, again, just undersized. So things like that are absolutely things that teams could use and things that teams could need. And the Panthers are one of them. Obviously I covered the Panthers for the most part, and the biggest issues I see with them defensively, first of all, there's a lot that was answered, right? Which is great. Devin Lloyd, Jalen Phillips, fantastic. Obviously, great gets. You had some sack prowess with Jalen Phillips. Devin Lloyd is that X factor linebacker that you hope for. But then, who's his partner right there? Is it a Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech? You look behind them. Trayvon Merrick, obviously, great. Who's next to Trayvon Merrick? Are you going to be okay with Lathan Ransom and Nick Scott? Are you going to rely on that? I certainly wouldn't. So do you go Dylan Thieneman? Do you go Emmanuel McNeil-Warren? If those guys are off the board later in the rounds, Jamari Ramsey out of USC, obviously there's a lot of good guys, in the secondary, especially if you go in the later rounds. One of my favorite names is Tacario Davis out of Washington. And the biggest knock I have with him is just that he doesn't understand how to use his size because he's 6'4", which at a cornerback is insane. So there are draft scouts and your draft analysts that have said that he's damn near impossible to throw over. So his problem is that he doesn't realize how big he is. So he gets called for pass interference, or you catch him holding on plays where it's like, you really don't need to. So that just takes time, effort, and patience, right? So I think Tacario Davis is a guy where, come round 3 or 4, if your team needs a corner, I think he's a great option. I think the Panthers could certainly use him because, to be honest with you, I don't know if Mike Jackson's going to be back after this season. Mike Jack had a fantastic year. He was, within PFF, Pro Football Focus, is one of the best ranked cornerbacks in the league. You saw his improvement. It's so funny. I pointed out a moment in the season exactly when it happened. It was in Green Bay, and Jordan Love threw him a lollipop in the end zone, and he dropped it. And I don't know what it was, but he just something switched. The next week, it was like, this is a Mike Jack revenge complex. And, I would say he's better than J.C. Horn last year. Funny enough, J.C. Horn ended up being a Pro Bowler. But Mike Jack was the better cornerback last year for the Panthers, which is wild to think about. So, obviously, Mike Jack looking for a payday. You need to have some options. So, I don't hate a guy like Tacario Davis later on. I think, you could go with Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee, and his injuries are obviously a question mark there. Jalen Kilgore, Carolinians love having anybody from the Carolinas, whether it's South or North, but he's a great player. A little undersized. D'Angelo Pond's another name, in the secondary that people come up with. Again, a little undersized, but had a fantastic year last year. So, a lot of options there. And then there's the interior question. Who do you put in the middle of Derek Brown and Nick Score? I mean, Bobby Brown is not an option, is not the answer. Obviously, you lose A'Shawn Robinson. Do you wait till the later rounds? Of course you do. You know, and where do you go? I love a guy like Chris McClellan out of Mizzou. Finesse guy, a little bit different. You know, you look at him, he's 6'4", 320. You're like, okay, this guy's a bulldozer, going to run through people. Kind of a Gerald McCoy type, man. Delicate, finesse, uses swim moves in ways that are really impressive. Again, this guy who played in the SEC and, you know, has had a lot of great performances. Chris McClellan could be a great guy come, you know, day 3, you know, maybe even later on day 2. I feel like you'd be stretching at that point. A lot of different ways you could go, man. Seriously. The city's been crazy, man. It's been fun checking out Pittsburgh. Obviously, I've been here quite a few times, but the energy from the fans has been really good. Obviously, for the most part, you're going to see Steelers fans when you're out there. There's a good presence from, you know, your friends from across the state, Philadelphia Eagles. Got some Ravens fans out there. I would say like there was a good amount of Colts fans too, which like I think there's a lot of fans that like made the drives, you know, from the relative areas, right? So, you know, which you love to see. On the screen right now, they got some Commanders. You know, Commanders got a big presence here, just media-wise. I mean, their whole, I think it's like Santana Moss, Brian Mitchell, you know, some of their legends. So, a lot going on there. But we'll check back in a little bit later. But, you know, kind of starting out here. I mean, you know, lay of the land. We're still about 5 minutes before the beginning of the draft. We're going to see how everything shakes out. Soon enough, we'll see. We'll see who's going to be Carolina Panther. We'll see what kind of happens after pick number 3. That's kind of what I feel like now at this point. You know, people were saying earlier this morning, well, the draft will start at pick number 2. It seems like David Bailey's going to be going to the Jets. So we'll check back in then. But, you know, we'll see what goes on, man. Happy draft day. We're here.